I think I for sure missed it this time, didn't I? Did I miss it? Oh yeah, I was a little bit late.
No,
A little bit late. Okay,
so
all right, no. I'm not losing my touch. The thing is that I added Instagram Live this time, so it threw off my my groove. So now we're at YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram Live. So
fair enough. That's first use.
I had to add something in, and it threw off my groove. Anyway, a lot of things threw off my groove today. That's why we're a little bit late. But this is the Slate Talk for Week 8, the Paydirt NFL DFS Slate Talk. My name is James Cool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com, and I'm joined, as always, by Pablo. He is my trusted companion in this world. We're actually life partners. Fun fact. We live in different states, but we are life partners. So
we are connected.
Each morning, I make sure that his dentures are cleaned and his walker is by his bed so he can get out and actually get his shit done that day. How you doing today, Pablo?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to talking through this. I am joining all you degenerates in the big $1,100 contest, not because I paid for it, but because my degenerate volume gave me an entry. So I will have to play at least one non-missionary lineup so I can try to take that down alongside all of you. And as you can tell, I'm invoking the universe behind me today. So hopefully it helps.
Yeah, that contest is that's a big one. I mean, only 5,000. It's not that huge of a contest, but it's a little bit bigger than you play. What do you usually play? You usually play what, 333?
Yeah, the biggest contests I play are like 400 to 500 entries. I play like the single entry 1,500. And then I usually play the single entry 300, like the 4max 400, the 555. That's kind of where I live, like and then I usually play like 1 or 2 100-man contests. So I play within like 100 to 400-man contests. So for me, 5,000 is a different level of leverage and what I usually build.
Yeah, 5,000. I mean, that's usually kind of like in the range that I usually play. I mean, I'm usually in the Wildcat, the 333, but I do prefer the smaller stuff. And then I've been maxing the Millie Maker this year just because I felt like throwing away a whole bunch of money. But instead of maxing the Millie this week, I'm just going to have one in the midseason main event.
More importantly, I'm continuing to double down in FanDuel because after our mention last week, I came in second place in the 555 on FanDuel for 10K, and I was for a while I was in first place for a very long time for 25K. So that was a bit of a it's hard. You did win 10K, but it sort of feels like you lost 15 when that happens. Mm-hmm. So I am continuing to double down, and this week I'm in the 888 on there. So I will continue to double down until I lose on it, but I've not lost yet.
You got to keep firing. Yeah, FanDuel sucks, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you have had that much success over at FanDuel with how hard fucking chalk has just crushed. Because you can build with whatever you want over there. You can literally just play literally all the best plays. DraftKings, you have been able to do that to a smaller extent this year. Like DraftKings pricing is still tighter, but as we have spoken to many times on this show this year, the pricing has just been fucked. I have not taken a look really hard at pricing yet so far for this slate.
Well, I have bad news for you.
Great, cool, and more bad news.
We're on another very, very loosely priced slate, like an incredibly loosely priced slate with chalk that is driven primarily by completely inappropriate pricing.
Okay, so let's see. I mean, Jamar Chase at 8,100, that's bad price. He's $1,000 on price still. Looks like wide receivers are still just by and large $1,000 underpriced, right?
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know, the way we do this is I usually spend like hours and hours thinking through the slate, putting together kind of macro strategy, and then James spends hours and hours refining his models, and then James comes onto this fresh, and so he discovers sort of the slate as we chat.
Yeah.
And, what he's going to discover here in a minute is that what we're going to talk about is that you can build whatever you want this week. Unfortunately, it's another DK algo's broken slate. Now the good news is I still, we'll talk about this. I do think there's some fairly predictable builds And I think that we can exploit those builds either top down or bottom up to get a little bit different to unlock ceiling that other people won't do.
Oh my God, fucking Denver versus Dallas. Okay, yeah.
So
okay,
look,
all right. Hold on, really quick before you jump forward. I'm not going to ding DraftKings for $5,900 Devontae Smith because we didn't know that AJ Brown was going to be out.
AJ Brown. Yeah,
it is what it is. I also want to say really quick, Jonathan Taylor is going to be 50% owned. Just I was scrambling to get the models up in a good fashion because all my fucking references broke, and I was like, why does everybody project for 17% ownership? That's why, because all my references broke. So I was scrambling, but I'm going to like basically double Jonathan Taylor's ownership. It's Jonathan Taylor who has been the best fantasy player in the league. 9,500. He's appropriately priced against Tennessee, who can't move the ball on fucking dick. So, Jonathan Taylor is going to be 1,000,000% owned. Those are my two observations. Devontae Smith is too cheap, but that's fair. Jonathan Taylor is going to be 50% owned. And then outside of that, we just saw that I think Drake London is actually going to be out.
Okay.
I think we just, or he got downgraded to questionable, maybe. I guess, let me go check on that really quick.
Okay, that'll increase Bijan a little bit if that's true.
So Drake London hip downgraded to questionable for week 8. So a questionable on Saturday means he's not going to play.
Yeah.
So that's
meaningful. That's meaningful. That's going to see Bijan a little bit.
Well, it's gonna bump Bijan, but then also what it's gonna do is it's gonna push Darnell Mooney, right? Yeah. And Darnell Mooney is probably what, maybe like with the pricing the way that it is right now, he's probably what, like.
Yeah, you don't need him though, because we're gonna go through it because you've got like 15 tight ends that are underpriced. You've got 3 running backs that are wildly underpriced, and you've got like 10 quarterbacks you can play.
Oh yeah, I heard that everybody is on all the tight ends. Yeah, Darnell Mooney's 4,400, man. He's gonna.
Yeah, he'll come up, but you'll see there's a lot of value in the slate. So I'm not even sure people need to go down to him. So,
all right,
so let's talk about this.
Go ahead and get started. Yeah, go for it.
So here's my theme for the slate. My theme for the slate is not dissimilar from what we talked about on a few other ones, which is everybody can afford to build good lineups this week. Like everybody's lineup is going to look good. And the reason for that is because it's soft pricing. And it's soft pricing around quarterback. It's soft pricing around running back. It's soft pricing a little less so on wide receiver, but there'll still be some now, especially like people like Mooney. And it's also especially soft pricing on tight end. So basically at every position, we have soft pricing. The good news is that because the pricing is so soft, there's a specific number of running backs everybody wants to play. You've already talked about one of them, and there's like 4 or 5 other ones that everyone's looking at. Okay. It's going to lead to a very predictable build structure, which is that we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. There's going to be a handful of quarterbacks people play. There's going to be one of like 7 to 8 with 3 or 4 main running backs everybody plays. There's going to be 3 or 4 main tight ends everyone's going to play. And then everyone's going to try to win the 2v2 at wide receiver. And what that means is that that might be annoying. And it's especially going to be annoying for small field where you don't really need to do something different for small field. And you just hope you get the right 2v2 like NBA, right? But for large field, I think it's exploited. Because I do think that there's some ways to unlock ceiling with a slightly less conventional build approach that we can talk about. And we'll get to that. But the lot. Just to understand the build structure this week, if we start with quarterback, because quarterback, we've talked about it, and I think this is something important that James pointed out, I think in week 1 or 2. We need to start thinking about quarterback and NFL DFS, especially for slates like this, as just another position. You don't need to think about it as like who you're pairing with 2 or 3 pass catchers. That's gone. It's gone most slates. So last week we had kind of a slate like that, but most slates that's gone this year. So this week we have essentially a few pay up quarterbacks that people are interested in. That's Bo Nix in the highest total game environment. We have Jalen Hurts with a condensed target tree now that AJ Brown is out, and with Baker Mayfield in a dome game with a decent total with good values, and then to some degree Daniel Jones. Okay, so my initial reaction, like every other week, was I don't want to pay up for these quarterbacks because there's a bunch of punts that you can play instead, and that allows me to pay up for the ceiling flex play, right? But here's the problem. Because we have several underpriced running backs and tight ends, it's a little harder because you really have to make a decision as to whether the pay downs of the quarterbacks are worth a little bit more spend up. And this week it's a little harder because there's so much value at the flex positions. And if we look at our range of outcomes, what you'll see is that at least pre the most recent refresh, we have some really nice projections on the pay downs. Like Joe Flacco looks really nice against the dogshit Jets team. Spencer Rattler, who I've been sort of piping all week, is piping. I've not been piping Spencer Rattler. I've been pumping him, but maybe you could say I'm piping him too. He has a very nice projection. We have Jackson Dart with a nice projection. I don't know that I trust that against the Eagles as severe dogs. So if you just sort by 2x and 3x, those guys look a lot nicer than Jalen Hurts and Bo Nix. It's not to say that Bo Nix and Jalen Hurts don't look good because their medians and their ceilings are generally better than the paydowns. But if you look at it as point per dollar plays, Spencer Rattler, now that Lamar's out, Tyler Huntley, Joe Flacco, and even Kirko against Miami, I'm not sure if I love that quite as much now with Drake London out. There's a big decision to be made, and it should not be made in isolation of what it means for the pay-ups, because that's really how you have to make the decision. But the first decision you're going to have to make is, are you going to get exposure to the Dallas game through Bo Nix or the Eagles game through Jalen Hurts? Or would you just rather save the money and go down to Flacco, Huntley, Rattler? That's going to be the first decision you have to make.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins at 4,400 fucking sucks, dude. Like Kirk Cousins was upwards of a $6,700 quarterback. He reached like 7K in his prime. Now, this is not prime Kirk Cousins for sure, but Darnell Mooney's kind of a fucking baller, and they have Kyle Pitts, and like they have Bijan Robinson. There's no reason why you couldn't go Kirk plus Bijan plus Darnell Mooney. Bijan Robinson catches like 6-7 passes a game. And like it's not like their game plan is going to change all that much. $4,400 Kirk Cousins, if he throws one to Bijan and throws one to Darnell Mooney, that's pretty much what you need. There's him. There's Spencer Rattler, who is not terrible, and Tampa Bay has been a pass funnel for like 3 years. Jackson Dart has been balling the fuck out. Like, I mean, I think I'm probably a little bit high at 19-11 on him. But at 1% ownership, I'm willing to take a shot at 5,500 on Jackson Dart. And it's not like Philadelphia's defense has been good this year. They've been legitimately bad this year, right? People have been wanting to attack them. So all of these cheap quarterbacks, and then Bo Nix is fucking 6K against Dallas. And now, okay, here's where I will level out the room a little bit. Bo Nix is not good. At least not right now.
He hasn't been good this year.
He's made a lot of fucking bad decisions, and people are like, oh, well, he made up for it in the fourth quarter. Okay, cool. Well,
he had a huge game last week against the Giants in that game that got crazy. He was very inefficient, right? The game basically, I mean, it was a 33-32, so it was a 65-point game. He was 27 for 50. He had a 54% completion ratio, right? 2 TDs, 2 sacks, but he threw for 270 yards. So he got there last week, and I think because of this game total and because he got there last week, albeit very inefficiently, people are excited to play him this week. He's the most owned quarterback.
Yeah, he's going to be 20-something% owned. Like he's going to be the highest owned. 6,000 is a silly price for him against Dallas. Now, I don't feel terrible about fading him. I feel terrible about fading Cortland Sutton. Would be who I would feel terrible about fading. When we talk about wide receivers, I will dive in on that a little bit more. But with all these cheap quarterbacks, I mean, dude, I've been playing DFS for a long time. I cannot remember a single season of NFL DFS.
That's what I'm telling you. I mean, so here's why, like, I, even with all the value, like in prior slates, like we had that one slate with the guy who used to be the quarterback for the Patriots who now plays for the Niners, whatever the fuck his name is, the backup for Purdy.
Mac Jones. Yeah, Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. We had Mac Jones like a few weeks ago, and he was clearly a good play because he was sort of needed because we didn't have as much flex value. And so this week it might not feel as intuitive to play Rattler or Huntley, a Flacco, a Kirk Cousins, but here's why I still lean on doing so, and I think that's going to be one of my stands this week is because we are playing a game where ownership matters, and we're playing a game where ownership matters, and on a slate like this, which is like an NBA slate, you need astronomic ceiling to win. You need astronomic ceiling to win. And you can't unlock astronomic ceiling unless every fucking guy you have is like really separating from the other people at his position. And I don't think you're going to get there with the $1,500 that you're wasting from going from Knicks up from Knicks instead of one of the cheap guys. And that's how I feel. I just feel like the kicker here is ownership. Like if it wasn't for ownership, I might, because we have so much value at other positions, I might say, well, you can play the punt tight ends. There's several good tight ends this week. You could play one of the two cheaper running backs we'll talk about in a minute, who both project very, very well at high ownership. And you can still get to Knicks. But the problem is then you're literally playing like 2v2, 3v3 versus field level. Like your macro construction is, whereas if you just go down to one of those cheaper quarterbacks in the 4 to 5K range, you now start building in, lineup separating ceiling that you just can't make up through a bunch of value plays.
Right. Yeah. And it's so hard. It's so hard to make any kind of rational argument for Josh Allen on the slate, for instance. I just can't do it. He projects really, really well, but at 7,500, man, I can get a $3,000 discount going from him down to Andy Dalton and secure having Bijan and Jonathan Taylor and probably Jamar Chase, right? Like I can probably get all three of them.
Right. Because in a few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to do what we normally do, which is once we've talked about receiver and running back first and receiver, we're going to sort the studs by median and ceiling. And what we're going to see is that you're going to have like 5 studs. And if you can get 3 or 4 of those guys instead of 2 of them, just like your range of outcomes. Like, so here's something that I think is interesting. And I don't know, you can tell me because you're the computer programming math wizard. I'm not. Sims. Whenever sim people use, your Sims, portfolio manager, the solver, ETR Sims, when they're sorting by win equity and cash equity, right? Are they looking at range of outcomes for the median 70th, 80th, 90th, 100, 99th percentile range of outcomes the same way our individual players are? Because what I'm asking myself in my head as I'm building these lineups is my range of outcomes with this macro lineup structure, right? Bo Nix plus 2 of the pay-ups plus some value, right? My range of outcome on that lineup versus, Cousins or Flacco or Rattler, whoever you want to pick down there, right? Plus 3 or 4 of those pay-ups, right? And my range of outcomes on that lineup. To me, it feels pretty logical to feel like you're like the absolute raw points you're going to have on your 80th, 90th, 99th percentile outcomes for your pay down quarterbacks with your elite studs is just way higher. And I'm wondering if that's how Sims are kind of creating, decisions.
So without going super deep into this, there's kind of 2 ways that you can run a sim and sort by. So the majority of the high level players that are using these sims are using sims and sorting by ROI of the lineup, which is basically where it finished and how much money it made you over the course of however many simulations, right? And those simulations are based around simulated outcomes of each individual lineup within the range of outcomes of the lineup. Now, the complex ones are, yes, going to take into account the range of outcomes of each individual player within that lineup. The less complex ones, some of the maybe more mainstream models, are typically going to be looking at the lineup as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. Because doing the range of outcomes at the player level can be hard to account for correlation and stuff like that. So you are either sorting by ROI, which I think is a really flawed metric. I'm not going to get into why, but you're either doing it that way or you're doing it in a way of sorting based on, how often each individual lineup wins within a clump of other lineups, right? Like you can have lineups play against each other. I don't know that people do this, but this is something that I think is an interesting thought, but kind of doing like a, create a lineup and then create another lineup and have them go head to head and then, sim those against each other and then keep doing that over and over again until you find the lineup that has 1 out of 10,000 simulations or whatever and use that lineup. Yeah. But I digress.
You get my more macro question, right? Which is to say, like, if you, whatever way you do it, like if you add up the individual players or you take the holistic lineup, what has a higher median 70th, 90th percentile outcome, the pay down quarterback with elite studs or the pay up quarterback with some additional value plays? And to me, it just feels very obvious that when you have a bunch of really, really good elite players, you're better off going down at quarterback.
Yeah, you just are. It has been a thing for a while for NFL where if you can pay down at quarterback, you should. And if you can pay down at running back, you should. And that has made it so that for a while, for the last probably 4 years, I want to say, you've heard like Levitan talk about it over at ETR. You hear, you've heard me talk about it. You hear like all the smart people talk about it, right? Pay down at quarterback, pay down at running back, take your variance and your upside at wide receiver, right? Mm-hmm. Now that has always been the way, and that speaks to your macro point here of if we have cheaper options at quarterback, we should take them because then we can afford the studs at every other position. The thing that has broken NFL DFS this year is that we have every single.
You don't even need it. You don't even need it.
No. We have every single week. We have $4,500 quarterbacks we can use.
Right.
Every week.
And the past, it was like the random guy who was starting that week, and you were like, "Shit, do I play him? He sucks. Like he hasn't played in 3 years." Now it's like, okay, like Rattler in a dome game with like the third highest total. Like Rattler sucks. We all agree on that. But like he's got Olave and Shaheed, we'll talk about in a minute, who project as like the two of the best value plays on the slate.
Right.
And then you've got Flacco, who just went crazy against the dogshit Jets with the Cincinnati having one of the highest totals. Like, and you compare him with Jamar Chase. So it really becomes like, to me, kind of like an obvious thing, which is, okay, which of these pay down quarterbacks are you going to use? And then what is the right combination of the elite players that you're going to use to get to the ceiling you need? That kind of becomes the slate. So let's move to running back, because I think it's important. This is not unlike the slate, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had like 5 main running backs. It's very similar to that slate. We have, for sure, Jonathan Taylor that everybody wants. Okay. He's going to be more owned, like you said, than predicted. The only thing that might keep him slightly in check is that people are trying to figure out how to use like Bo Nix instead of just going down at quarterback. Because he's expensive enough in comparison to a few of the pivots up there that it won't get like completely out of control. Like in small field, it probably will, but in larger field, people will sort of try to figure out a way to say to themselves, well, like if I can play Derrick Henry and Rachaad White with Saquon or CMC for a little less money than Jonathan Taylor, like I can get to these receivers I want, right? And Bo Nix. Whereas if you just play Joe Flacco or you play Spencer Rattler, you don't have to do that. You can play fucking Bijan and Jonathan Taylor and Jamar Chase, maybe. So the thing I would point out with running back here is I just think people every week in the Discord, people like bring up like a random running back who's in a vacuum a good play, but we're not in a vacuum. We're in a slate here where we have cheap quarterbacks, a lot of value at tight end, and a few running backs that I just don't think you need to get like off the beam path. I think to me, if we look at our medians and ceilings here, we've got Bijan and Jonathan Taylor who have astronomical ceilings and astronomical medians in very good spots. Okay. Now Bijan gets even better with Drake London out his volume. You have Derrick Henry, who we have a little bit lower than the rest of the industry in terms of range of outcome standpoint, but he's 6K. He's 6K. Like, when has Derrick Henry ever been 6K? Right? I don't know. He's 6K. Then we have Rashad White in that game that people are excited about with a really good range of outcomes. And that's kind of like the main running back pool. Like, you've got Jonathan Taylor, Bijan, Derrick Henry, Rashad White. But then what's kind of nice is that you do have a few pivots. You have CMC, who's going to be suppressed. He's going to be suppressed because people want Bijan and Taylor. Okay, so that's a nice kind of high upside pivot. You have Achane. People are down on Miami, and nobody wants to play Achane, right? He's got a nice median. He's got a nice ceiling. You've got Saquon. Saquon's not going to be super low, but he's going to be a little suppressed, again, because everyone's gravitating to those top two, right? And then you have James Cook. So my feeling is that, like, if you just play one, like, you're probably going to play three of those guys. Maybe you play two if you can convince yourself that you need to pay up at receiver with Jamar Chase and somebody else. But you're probably playing three of those running backs. And I would just say that you don't, like, I agree, J.K. Dobbins is a good play. Like, if you're not playing the Denver pass game in a super high total game, in a normal slate, I'd be kind of excited to play J.K. Dobbins as leverage off of the pass game in Denver. But I can't justify it. I can't justify it when we've got, like, 5 main guys who project incredibly well, and then 4 pivots who are also really, really strong. Chase Brown I'll add in there too, by the way. Chase Brown is a nice pivot as well off of the Cincinnati pass game.
Yeah.
And I would just say, like, it's kind of nice because you have, like, a very condensed player pool, but it also kind of sucks because, you know, I don't know. It feels a different bit like roulette. Like, you just got to land on the right number.
Yeah, that's been DFS this year. It's just you know, you have like 26 plays that are really fucking good, and you just
my player pool is like 30 players, and it's just like, what's the right combination of these people?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it's been all year. Now, granted, there is going to be a slate this year that is going to break everyone's fucking brains.
Yeah, we're gonna have some shock that finally fails, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be a week where, like, 18 of the 30 chalk pieces fails, and somebody's going to score like 209 and take down the Millie Maker and, like, have 5-6% owned players or some shit, right? It's going to be a really dumb slate. This could be that slate. Who knows? But I kind of doubt it.
I doubt it. There's just two, like, okay, maybe 2 of these guys fail. Like, I could see our models being a little lower and Derrick Henry being, I think Derrick Henry, just for the record, I mean, I'll probably have a good amount of him tomorrow because I do think 6K is kind of egregious, and I'm not sure Lamar Jackson being out now really scares me off Derrick Henry against the Bears. But I will say, like, he's probably a little more fragile than people want to admit. Like, Derrick Henry has not had eruption games the way we expect out of him this year, and the field really wants to play him this week. Like, the field really wants to play Jonathan Taylor because Jonathan Taylor is in a fucking smash spot and he's been crazy every week. And I feel like weirdly more comfortable paying up for Jonathan Taylor than I do paying down for Derrick Henry. Okay, I could see Derrick Henry having, like, a fine game that doesn't, like, kill you. But I will say 6K tempers my, desire to fade a little bit. Like, 6K is still pretty shitty as a price.
The one spot that I think, and everybody's going to say this, the one spot that I think you make a really strong pivot is away from Bijan Robinson onto Christian McCaffrey. Everyone is going to say it this week, okay? Like, Jonathan Taylor is going to be 50% owned, and currently, as things stand, Bijan projects for 26% ownership, and Christian McCaffrey projects for 9%. And just watch. I'm saying it now. Christian McCaffrey is a really good pivot off Bijan Robinson. You're going to hear it on Skotastic. You're going to hear it over at fucking RPS. You'll probably hear it from ETR, and then all of a fucking sudden, we're going to flip the cards, and Christian McCaffrey's going to be 25% owned, and Bijan's going to be 20%.
Maybe.
No, it's going to happen.
Maybe. Yeah, it's possible. I think people will be willing to pivot off of Bijan more than Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
But I think people still really want Bijan, and I think because the pricing is so loose at tight end and receiver. But you're right. I mean, look, if people want to get up to Knicks, And to Hurts, it's not that easy to play 2 or 3 of the payups. Like you kind of have to sacrifice somewhere. So you're right. He might get like indirectly steamed a little bit more than we expect. But I do think it's worth pointing out for larger field. Like generally speaking, I feel like for pivots at running back, historically speaking, we've had to kind of like go off the beaten path a little bit. Like you have to say, well, I have to find like the sneaky guy, right? I have to find the sneaky guy nobody's playing. And this week, I think because Jonathan Taylor is going to eat up so much ownership, and then Derrick Henry and Rachaad White, because the chalk build will be Bo Nix with Bijan and or Jonathan Taylor, and then Derrick Henry and Rachaad White, right? Like it'll be some combination of those 4 players plus Hurts or Nix. And what I'll say is because that'll be so concentrated, that next tier, like Saquon, James Cook, Chase Brown, CMC, Achane, becomes a little more powerful of a pivot than normal. It's like they're not sneaky by any means, but I do think that main tier will soak up the vast majority of the ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is going to soak up the vast majority of the ownership. And this is exactly the point that I wanted to make. Every DFS channel is going to say that CMC is a great pivot, and we can see Bijan having they're going to have the same ownership. Like they're both going to end up being 20% owned. So I just wanted to say that really quick, and I wanted to point it out because for the next 24 hours, everyone is going to be talking about how good of a play CMC looks at the ownership that he's at, and I just checked DTR's ownership; they have him at 16%, CMC specifically. So they have him higher than I do right now. And we're already seeing the steam come up on him. So
I can already see this is like a classic. Who's the guy who does the helicopter tweet?
Oh, Ian Harris.
Yeah. And so that's always the guy he picks. He always picks like the slight pivot.
Yeah.
Because he wants people to be like, oh, like, wow, I don't have to play Bijan, I can play CMC. So he's gonna pick CMC and he's gonna say helicopter, blah, 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 blah. And it's gonna say CMC. Okay, I'm gonna try to guess it. Ready?
Okay.
145 yards and 3 TDs. That's what he's going to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Yep.
So let's talk about receiver because running back is fairly straightforward. Let's talk about receiver.
Yeah. Oh, also, before we move over into wide receiver, I think that Derrick Henry is a really easy fade. You and I are at odds on that, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, no, look, we're not at odds. I actually want to fade him. I just don't think it's an easy fade. We're together in my desire to fade him. I just don't know how easy it is.
That's fair. All right.
So at wide receiver, it's a little bit different. We have Jamar Chase, who's kind of like the only bona fide pay up that everybody wants. And he's going to be fucking owned, okay? Because we saw him last week against Jalen Ramsey. People are excited about Joe Flacco. What's funny is like no one's going to play Joe Flacco, which is like, oh, like I should play Joe Flacco. I played Jamar Chase. And then I could have afforded 2 of the pay ups, but we already made that point. So I'll leave that there. Devontae Smith is going to get steamed a bit because of the A.J. Brown injury. And to your point, I'm not going to be too mad at DraftKings about that. Like, we didn't know A.J. Brown is like probably demanding a trade or whatever's happening now. And then we had Drake London as chalk, but it sounds like he's out now. So we'll see how that affects ownership. For sure, Mooney's going to become good value now. I don't think Flowers is going to be quite as owned as he was going to be before, just because I don't think people are super excited to play Tyler Huntley. And I think some of Flowers was, there you go. Like it's exactly that question. I think it's going to bring him down a little bit. I just don't think he becomes as much of a priority for everybody, because what you see next, and this is kind of like an interesting thing I was feeling when I was building, I want to get your take on it, is that part of the reason I really have loved the Rattler play, one could say I'm piping if they want to mispronounce pumping.
Yes.
That's how much I love him. People might accuse me of wanting to pipe him. So anyway, is because if you look at Olave and Shaheed, they're like excellent value. That game has like that lovely right below the highest total. Like it's not as high of a total as the Denver game, but it's like a very respectable total. It's an indoor game. It's Tampa who tends to be a pass funnel, over the last several years. Rashid Shaheed is a good play too. Fucking Rattler is cheap as hell, right? And then you've got Rachaad White across them. You've got Tez Johnson, who projects like incredible value also because Mike Evans is out. You get Ibuka, who projects as good value. And there's 2 points I want to make. One is that one way to get a little bit different on the slate is say, you know what? I'm just going to fucking bank on that game going into the moon. I'm going to fucking game stack that game. Like full-blown game stack. Like, 2 pass catchers, at least 2 bringbacks. Like, not a bullshit game stack. Not like a little mini correlation, Rashad White, Olave, is what everyone's going to do. What everyone's going to do is we're going to do Bo Nix, fucking CMC or Bijan and Jonathan Taylor, and they're going to do a little mini of Olave and Rashad White, right? And that's missionary. Instead, you can say, fuck this. I'm going to go all in on that game. There's one way to do things differently, okay? But the other thing that I've been debating a little bit, and I think it's showing up a little bit in the ownership, and maybe the way to do it is you just play Cortland Sutton, okay? What's weird about this slate, this is like the one weird fucking thing about this slate, is that Denver, Dallas has a super high total, but the players are priced in a way that does not lend itself to people playing much of that game. Like people are mostly only going to play that game through Bo Nix. There might people will probably skinny him with Sutton. Like I don't think a lot of people will play Franklin and Mims with him. And then the Dallas guys don't project that well. Like CeeDee Lamb doesn't project that well. Javonte doesn't project that well. Fergie doesn't project that well. So, there's a part of me that's like, well, I don't want to force shitty projections in the highest total game just because it's the highest total game. But there's another part of me which is like, well, I don't know if ownership is going to be suppressed on the highest total game, maybe we just figure out how to play that game the right way, right? I don't know. I mean, it's a weird thing when you've got a game with such good total, but the players are priced in a way that nobody really wants to play that game.
Yeah, people don't want to play the Dallas side specifically because Denver's defense is fucking nuts, right? I mean, that's a thing that people worry about a lot. And to be fair, Denver's defense looks like as good as the 85 Bears right now, right? Like they're
just go under, right? There's a debate you have to have. You're going to say do I just not believe the total, and I'm just going to do what everyone is doing, you just play Cortland Sutton or maybe skinny Bo Nix, or do I believe the total? And I'm actually going to try to lean into that game. The hard thing is it's really hard to look at the lineups you build in that game because you're really sacrificing a lot of median. I mean, even you're sacrificing ceiling too. I mean, the guys are just too expensive on the Dallas side.
Yeah, it's especially hard. Like you said, it's a weird price point for a handful of players. Like getting to CeeDee Lamb at 7,800 is hard. It's just really hard to land there, especially because he does not project especially well, and his expected fantasy points is relatively low, right? Like
you're getting off by definition, the guys we've talked about, Bijan, Jamar Chase,
right.
CMC, all the Jonathan Taylor, you're getting off those guys. At least one of those guys that plays CD.
Yeah, and it feels bad overall. And then people are scared of Denver's defense, so they don't want to play the Dallas guys. And I think there's something that goes on in people's heads that says if I can't play one side, I'm less inclined to play the other side, right? Like they look at it and they're just like, oh, well, it's probably not going to be a shootout because of Denver's defense. And because of that, we're not going to get as much upside from the other side, blah, blah, blah. But if Bo Nix is going to be 20% owned, I think you have to look at it I think you have to look at it this way. If you believe that Bo Nix is going to be 20% owned, I think that the ownership projections on the rest of that game are all low. I think that more people are just going to play Cortland Sutton and Trey Franklin, right?
Yep.
People are just going to play them because if Bo Nix is 20% owned, yeah, people are a little bit more accepting of not stacking this year, but I think that people are still going to stack with Bo Nix, especially against Dallas. So I think if you believe the ownership projections on Bo Nix, then you have to think that the other ones are going to be carried along. But I do think that people are just genuinely too low on the Dallas side if the total for that game is what it is. So you have to believe a couple different things about this spot in order to accept the value proposition of stacking it. You have to accept either that the Bo Nix ownership is projecting too high and that across the board they will be lower, or you have to accept that the team total or the game total there is too high and people shouldn't be going after it as much, right? Like it's kind of this weird thing where it's hard to read the tea leaves on either side of it.
Yeah.
So
I think what I'm going to do, I mean, I've already mentioned it, but I think what I'm going to do is because I think the New Orleans Tampa Bay game is so nice. Like it's so nice. Like you can play Baker with those guys. You can play Rattler with those guys and then get up the ceiling guys. I think I'm probably just going to fade that Dallas Denver game. Just hope it goes way under. Like and I'm going to hope that the ownership across the board in that game is a little higher than what we expect. Because I just think that, you know, if it is more owned than what we project, it's hard to imagine Bo Nix is going to be as owned as we think he is, and like nobody else is going to be owned. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm going to predict that they are going to be a little more than we predict, and I'm just going to hope that it ends up being a little bit of a disappointing game. And I think we have good reasons to believe that. I mean, I do think we have good reasons to believe that. Number one, I kind of agree with you. I think people got a little too high on Bo Nix after last year. I don't know that he's going to be a shitty quarterback long run, but I think right now he's not a great quarterback.
Right.
I think people are over correcting for last week in a game that got nutty. He was incredibly inefficient. He got there in fucking like 55, whatever I said before, pass attempts. Mm-hmm. And, you know, not every Dallas game is going to be this track meet. Like, you know, I don't know. Like I would not be that surprised to see that game be, you know, have a okay outcome. Like it could be like a 23-20 game. Like it could be a 43-point game. But is it really going to be a 50-plus game? I'd rather bet on the New Orleans Tampa Bay game. I can see that game having way more routes to get there than you know, the Denver Dallas game, especially when you factor in the pricing.
Yeah, I'm much more on other spots. I mean, I like Atlanta as a stack this week. I like New Orleans. I like Tampa Bay. I like Indianapolis. Fucking. And for everyone who has been watching the show,
you're the brand.
Oh God, I'm gonna go fucking broke stacking this goddamn team, dude. Every week they put up like 48 real life fucking points, and I can't get more than 20 fantasy points out of the goddamn stack.
By the way, did you see Danny Jones? Like he's got like swag. Did you see him last week?
He's so fucking good this year.
Did you see what he said after the game? They said to him, like, one of the reporters, one of like the main NFL reporters said to him after the game, it was all over Twitter. I'm sure everybody saw it. Yeah. They said, you know, what's your reaction? Like everybody thought you guys weren't going to be this good this year. Like what did you guys like? What do you think now about what we thought we knew? And his answer, like stone cold, like not even like blinking, like no, his blood pressure didn't change. He said, "Seems like you guys didn't know very much." He's just like, "Fuck you." Like I'm fucking Danny Dimes. Fuck you. In whatever Indiana Jones, whatever people call him that. Yeah. So I'm with you, dude. Like I think that there's like if we just go down the list of in terms of game totals, after that game we have.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can bring up the facts, right? So here's the team totals. I think as of yesterday, I didn't update today yet. As of yesterday. So Indianapolis at the very top, Jonathan Taylor or Indianapolis stacks, whichever one you fucking feel like burning money on, because whatever one you choose, you're going to be wrong. Denver stacks project for 29. Philadelphia, 29. Atlanta, 27. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, Baltimore. I mean, this is like you have so many options. And if you look over at ownership, like, yes, there's going to be ownership on Indianapolis, but not that much. There's going to be more ownership on Philadelphia than basically any of the really high-owned total stacks. You get no ownership on Buffalo. You get basically no ownership on Tampa Bay. Baltimore is going to fall down, obviously. Even New England at single-digit ownership, that's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But you have so many games here with high totals. Like,
yeah, and if you go to your stack range of outcomes, and we'll talk about tight end in a second because the stacks play into the stack range of outcomes, and you sort it by 3x, right? Or sort it by 3x, and then you keep in mind those game totals. Hey, look at what's right after Philadelphia's own, right? I don't believe CJ Stroud. Like to me, CJ Stroud's off the radar for this slate, which whatever. Spencer Rattler, Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins. What do these things all have in common? You have cheap quarterbacks with high total games, with easy to pair partners that allow you to get to the pay up flex guys. Yeah. That's the fucking game this week. That's the game this week. In my opinion, the game this week is you pick your choice of the cheap. You pick your choice of like Rattler, Mayfield, Flacco, and Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. You pick the right stack there. You get the right combination of the fucking ceiling guys, and that's how you win. Right? Because it just, those games have really nice totals, and those guys are the 3x for and the 4x value for like a fraction of the price. I mean, look, the Rattler ones are what's the price? I'm old and I can barely see.
Well, I mean, it's 13.8 for the top overall Rattler stack, right? With Olave and Juwan Johnson. If you wanted to go with
what about your boy Cousins? What's your Cousins?
Oh,
and by the way, that's London. When you put fucking Mooney in there, okay, subtract $400 because it's Mooney.
I know we're going to be looking at a stack with Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and Kyle Pitts. It's probably going to be what, like fucking 12K or some shit.
Yeah. By the way, you can do Bijan with that too if you want, because Cousin will throw a rollout pass to Bijan and he'll run it.
Yeah. Really quick, a note here from Goomba's 3040. You got to watch out paying down at QB this week, because one of the constructions it leaves you with is on 2 cheap wide receivers and 1 elite, 1 mid-level wide receiver versus the chalk build of 2 mid versus 2 wide receivers. I think getting off the 2 cheap wide receivers build is the key. So, I mean, for the most part, I see where you're coming from on that. The problem is that Darnell Mooney is cheap only because, like, he wasn't the wide receiver 1. He's now the wide receiver 1 with Darnell Mooney out, right? So he is $1,500 underpriced, I would guess. Kyle Pitts at $3,900 is also super cheap. $3,900. He's probably $1,000 underpriced, something like that, right? I do think that if you're speaking specifically to wide receivers, and you're speaking specifically to like the ownership on the cheap guys, so Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson, Marvin Mims, Khalil Shakir.
Yeah. I think those guys are unnecessarily fragile on the slate.
I agree. Like, I'm more focused on the reason why I want to play a cheap quarterback is for Devontae Smith and for Cortland Sutton and for Chris Olave. I want these mid-range wide receivers.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So to your point, where
you said you don't need it. You don't need it.
To your point where you said versus the chalk build of 2 mid and 2 cheap, like I just want like 2 mid and inexpensive, right? Or 3 mid, right? I'll take 3 mid-level wide receivers. I can fade Jamar Chase if I take Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. I'm fine with that. I don't think that you need the cheap wide receivers. Now, the only thing that I will say about that is that I don't think there's a problem taking Darnell Mooney or Troy Franklin in their spots, because I think that both of them are like really underpriced. But stacking them up, I don't think you have to do. And that's the reason why we want to pay or play a cheap quarterback. I keep saying pay instead of play. And then
better than pipe and pump.
Yeah, better than pipe and pump. And then from Goombas again, Baltimore Falling is going to pull up Philly and Tampa Bay. I do think that it's going to pull up Philly. I don't think it'll pull up Tampa Bay all that much. It might, but I think that people are kind of apprehensive about how to attack Tampa Bay. And I think it'll probably, just like with Baltimore falling off there, I think we're just going to see more ownership bleed into Cortland Sutton. I think we'll see more ownership bleed into that Denver-Dallas game and the Philadelphia game.
Here's why I kind of agree with you on that, is that it's just really easy to build cash lineups this week. And so people are mostly going to build cash lineups. Like, no one's going to overstack a game, because it's like you're by overstacking a game, you're giving up like a bunch of chalk players that are projecting really, really well, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about tight end, and then let's do our ceiling running back wide receiver comparison, because tight end is pretty simple. Tight end is basically 5 guys. It's Goddard, Schultz, as like cheaper guys that are going to be owned. And Schultz is especially, projects really well across the industry, and he's really cheap. Then we have, now Pitts is going to get a little higher now because of the injury. He's also pretty cheap. And then you have some people are going to play Kittle. Kittle's not going to be that owned, but he projects well. And he had a bit of a bust on prime time in like the showdown slate, so that might affect a little bit his ownership. He got like 0 points and he was pretty chalky. I had him in most of my lineups. And then K. Dotton will have some ownership because of that game. And then the pay up will be Tyler Ward. And the pay up should be Tyler Ward because he's fucking. We say it every week. Like the guys in like if we look at his game logs, like it's crazy. Like, every week he's putting up like 15 to 25 points, and he's only 5,500. Like I don't know. He's the like for some reason they won't price him up. So I do think with the desire to play up for Hurts and Knicks, and I do think with the desire for people to get to those elite flex players and Bijan and CMC and Jonathan Taylor and Jamar Chase, like it'll probably like keep Warren a little more in check. And I think people will more play Dalton Schultz and the cheaper, like the punt tight end is gonna, I think, have outsized ownership this week. I think it makes Warren a little more fun to play. And to your point for larger field, Jones stacks, Warren is a little bit of leverage off of Taylor. Like if Warren steals a couple touchdowns from Taylor, that helps you quite a bit, right? If you fade Taylor. Mm-hmm. But it's not, and then the other point I'll make on tight end is I think you need to think about correlation as like a bonus for tight end. Like this week with these tight ends all projecting pretty well and several of them being underpriced. My feeling of your tight end is, I think you said it last week, it really depends on what you do with the rest of your lineup. Like if you need the leverage at tight end, you can play like Juwan Johnson instead of one of these 5 guys that we just mentioned, so that you just correlate him with opposite Baker Mayfield or with Spencer Rattler. But if you don't need the leverage, then you don't necessarily need to correlate. You can just eat Tyler Warren, or you can eat Dallas Goedert or Dalton Schultz. Like if you have enough leverage with the rest of your lineup, those tight ends project well enough and are cheap enough where I don't think you need to get crazy with it. That's kind of tight end. I mean, it's a handful of guys. I don't know. Like, to me, it's like not necessarily a place I feel like I need to differentiate. I feel like it's just like play the guy who's either correlated, or if you're leveraged enough, just play one of the good tight ends.
There's 2 guys that you didn't mention here that I think are going to be viable and likely will be mentioned. Cade Otton being one of them, 3,400. Well, fuck my ears, I guess. Cade Otton, he's gonna get some ownership. 3,400. He's kind of in that same spot as Dalton Schultz. Yeah. Then the other one is Colton Loveland. He at 3K with somebody I just kind of penciled him in earlier when I was building out my dummy. With no Cole Kmet, he's going to end up getting some steam. I don't think he's going to be high owned or anything, but at 3K, I think you can rotate him in with Schultz and Otton. I just don't really like. I'm going to expand on your point of saying that like correlation is bonus for tight end. Correlation is a bonus on the slate just in general. Like you lose fantasy points by correlating. Like say, let's take a Denver stack, right? Let's take Bo Nix plus Cortland Sutton plus Troy Franklin. You straight up lose fantasy points by a large margin by going Cortland Sutton instead of just going down to Devontae Smith for $300 less. Yeah. And you can extrapolate that point out to a lot of different spots on the slate. Kyle Pitts, for instance, like, yes, you can correlate Kirk Cousins with Kyle Pitts, and that's fine, but you're straight up losing fantasy points by just not going down the $600 to Dalton Schultz at 3,300. Yeah. There are a lot of.
We've said it a bunch of times. It's very similar to NBA. It's very similar to NBA.
Yeah, this year is just NBA building. So I just wanted to hammer home that point, man. Like correlation is not something that you should be looking to outright force, especially on this slate. Tight end has been underpriced for 2 years now. But like especially again this year, like we have 4 or 5 guys here that are probably about $1,000 underpriced. Schultz, Otton, Kyle Pitts, and Loveland. Like Loveland should be 4K starting.
Warren too, by the way. Warren should be like mid-6.
And Warren should be the most expensive tight end on the slate. It doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't be. So we have all these guys who are $1,000 underpriced. Wide receiver across the board, $1,000 underpriced. Running back outside of Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is finally priced appropriately. Outside of that, everybody $500 underpriced. Quarterback, we have 5 quarterbacks under 5K that are starting.
Yeah.
They're starting at under. This isn't even like a fucking CJ Colton box situation where we're playing the backup hoping that he gets fucking benched. They're starting. So correlation almost. I would almost go as far as say that you should try to avoid correlation.
Well, here's the only exception, and I know I'm like probably anchoring on the Tampa game, but I do. There's like, if you can find a game environment that gives you leverage from an ownership standpoint, and you don't have to sacrifice median and ceiling from a correlation standpoint, then that's powerful because you're slightly enhancing the chances it happens through correlation. And the only game I can really convince myself of that, like where you're not sacrificing via the players you have to pair with, is that game. Because you have, on the Tampa side, you have Rashad White, you have Egbuka, you have the cheap guy, Tez Johnson. And then on the New Orleans side, you have Olave, Shaheed, and if you want, you have Juwan Johnson, although he projects a little. But other than that, like there's no other game environment where you don't have to sacrifice projection value for correlation. That's like the only game. It's the only game you really, maybe the Atlanta and Miami game, like maybe that game, like now with Mooney and Bijan and Kirk Cousins. But that's probably the only other game. Like every other game, those are the only 2 games where you can correlate and not sacrifice a ton of value across the board.
Yeah.
Right? And that's probably why I'm so focused on those 2 games.
And I think those games are fair. I really like the Atlanta spot just because, again, like you can do like for less than 13K, you can get a legit starting stack and you get leverage off of Bijan. That's going to be my preference for.
Can you sort the wide receivers and the running backs by median and ceiling? Because I think one decision people are going to have to face this week, it's something I've faced in the early going as I've started building my lineups, is like, how do I prioritize these payups? And because you can only pay, like, even if you pay down a quarterback, even if you play Rattler or Cousins or Huntley or whoever you want, Flacco, realistically, like you can only probably fit 3 of them, like maybe 4 if you get creative. So you're going to have to make a choice between JT, CMC, Bijan, Jamar Chase, Saquon, and you're going to have to make a choice there. Like, and I think most people feel most comfortable with Jonathan Taylor, even though he's appropriately priced. No one's going to click on CeeDee Lamb. And I think what's going to happen is I think Saquon, Devon Achane, for sure CeeDee Lamb are going to come in at just like a lot lower value. CMC, I TBD. I kind of see your point. Like he might become like the popular pivot and then actually steam because of that. But also he still might come in a little suppressed. Like I'm not sure he's going to reach JT Bijan levels. Maybe.
Oh, he won't even come close to Jonathan Taylor, but he might be 25% owned and the second highest running back on the slate.
Yeah. So my feeling on this is not super sexy. I think it kind of depends. I don't feel super like incredibly strongly that any of these guys are way better than everybody else. I like Jonathan Taylor should nuke. I think CMC should do great. Bijan should nuke. Jamar Chase should nuke. Saquon probably should nuke. I mean, they're home favorites against the fucking Giants with the high total. Bonus on Saquon is you get a little bit of leverage off Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts. So that's kind of nice about him. And I kind of feel like a little bit of it depends on how big your contest is and how leveraged your lineup is already. Like if you're playing a small field contest and you've got Rattler double, like I don't know that you need to get off Jonathan Taylor or Bijan. Like it just feels like overthinking it. Like why force Saquon like in that situation, right? But if you're playing Bo Nix with Troy Franklin and Portland Sutton, who we think will probably come in a little more owned, right? And you're playing a cheap tight end like Schultz, then you probably need to pivot at one of these payups. You probably do need to play. You can't play Jonathan Taylor or Bijan. You probably need to play Saquon or Achane or James Cook, or fine pivots if they're not like weird crazy plays.
Yeah. I wanted to sort by expected fantasy points here to show off Javonte Williams, who said, and I quote, "I'm going to put my weight on them. They will feel my girth."
Wow.
Which is the most pause statement that I have ever heard an athlete say during an on-air interview. Just crazy stuff, to be honest with you.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The problem with that is that our range of outcomes sort of disagrees, even though his expected points are good. And I don't know. I just don't think Javonte Williams is that good. He had that one game in the first 2 weeks that was strong. But narrative street, I like the narrative. I mean, like he'll be unowned. Like that's another player in the highest total game will be unowned. I mean, it's the weirdest part of this slate by far is that we have low ownership projections on the highest total slate game because of their pricing.
Yeah. I mean, look, Javonte Williams, and it just goes to your point earlier. It's just a really weird price. Like 6,800, that's absolute fucking no man's land for a running back on this slate. Yeah. You're either gonna go all the way up, and let's face it, the vast majority of people are gonna pay double up at tight end or at running back, right? Like the vast majority of people are gonna play some 2-man combo of Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, and Bijan Robinson. And then outside of that,
if they don't, they're just gonna play Rashad White and Derrick Henry instead. Like
right.
If you don't double pay up, you're just playing one of those two running backs instead. You're not playing Javonte instead of Lamar, instead of Henry or Rashad White.
Right. By no means are you doing that. So I mean, Cam Scatabo, right? Like 6,600. His expected fantasy points have been good. His median is strong. Like Quinshon Judkins, who was fucking like 1,000,000% owned and got there for every single fish, including fucking me. Like he's gonna be 1% owned this week.
Yeah. So it does create some very easy off the board plays for larger field. Like you can play any of those guys.
Again, like you said earlier, it's like all of these plays are fine. I don't like.
You're giving up because it all. I mean, I don't want to sound like we're just complaining because we play the game, we play the cards that we're dealt, right? But the truth is, like you're just giving up so much. That's why when we went through running back, I was like, just don't play. Just pick 3 of these 8 guys because you're giving up so much. Even if you want to pivot a little bit off to Saquon instead of Jonathan Taylor and Bijan, or you want to pivot to Achane, fine, I'll give you that. But you're giving up too much then to go to Javonte. You're giving up too much. You're just giving up too much, and it's not their fault. It's because everybody else is underpriced.
Yeah, it really is. Like the 6K range, it's just fucking dead zone. So, sticking to the roster construction thing here, and I know that we have to cut this here pretty soon because you got things to do. But like sticking to the roster construction stuff, the way that you have to look at it, I think that you just start with like 2 of Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, and Bijan Robinson. You just start there. And then if you want to play a Javonte Williams or a Scatabo or a Quinshon Judkins, who I think are all terrific plays at the ownership, they have to go in your flex. You're making the decision of, do I want to play a 3 RB lineup or a 4 wide receiver lineup or 2 tight end lineup if you feel like doing that. But like,
I don't think you need to this week. People
no, I don't think so either.
We mentioned it before when we needed value. This week you don't need double tight end.
Yeah, you don't need the value. So it's a question of, do you want to play 3 running back or 4 wide receiver? And it's just a question, really. Do you want to play Quinshon Judkins or do you want to play fucking Cortland Sutton? Do you want to play Cam Scatabo or do you want to play Devontae Smith? And when you say these things out loud, you're like, no, I don't want to play Quinshon Judkins or Cam Scatabo.
Right.
Like I'm just going to play the wide receivers. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So I think that there are plenty of ways to play these guys. Like there are good running backs on the slate, but the pricing just makes them worse plays.
Yeah. Here's my like take home point on macro lineup builds this week, which I think is important. Which is to say, like, be very self-aware about how different or not different your build structure is than the field. because the more similar your build structure is to the rest of the field, and the larger your contest is, the wackier you need to get around that build, right? And the less similar your build structure is, and the smaller your field structure is, then the less wackier you have to get with the rest of your build. And I think we know what the kind of the most, I think the kind of the sort of the blueprint that will be the most common will be the pay up QB. It'll be the Kurtz or Knicks with 2 or 3 of those pay up elite flex plays. It'll be 2 of the cheaper wide receivers with the cheap tight end. And then punting down like Cincinnati defense, who's we're not going to talk about defense, but they're really cheap. So people will just go down to Cincinnati against the Jets. That'll be the most common approach. And if you do that, I would just tell you that you have to be ready to get kind of weird at a couple positions, because you're basically just playing a 2v2 game. If you're playing a 2v2 game against the rest of the field, right? And it's okay. Like if you want to play a 2v2 game, you can play that game. It's kind of what NBA is. But don't be mad when you like miss min caching by 1 point, because you basically did what everybody else did, right? Like you're going to bubble. Like if you bubble this slate, it's probably because you just did what everybody else did and you got the wrong 2v2. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's 2 ways I think we can get different on the slate to avoid that. Okay. One way you can do it is by playing one of those cheaper quarterbacks and getting to more ceiling value and more pay-ups than the value plays everyone's going to use. Like just play Flacco, play Cousins, play Rattler, and then definitionally your lineup will look different because you have more pay-ups than other teams will. And I really like that, as I've mentioned a few times, because if those guys get to their 80th and 90th percent outcomes, you're separating. Like you're separating from the mid-range and you're separating from the value plays. Mm-hmm. The other way I think you can get different, and I think there's 2 games to do it through. The main game is Tampa Bay, New Orleans, but I also think you can do it through Atlanta, Miami, is to play a little game stack of one of those games and then surround that with a few chalk pieces.
Yeah.
I think those are the 2 approaches this week. Like you either go down a quarterback and unlock some ceiling, or you game stack your game of choice between Tampa Bay, New Orleans, in my opinion, Atlanta, Miami, maybe Chicago, Baltimore, if you believe Tyler Huntley can push them. And that's how you get different. I just think the most important part is whichever path you choose, be aware of the path you're choosing. Be aware of how different or not different that is from the rest of the field. Because we know what the field is going to do. Like it's not a secret. And then be ready to build enough leverage in there to win your contest. Don't be mad if you don't get different enough and you bubble. Don't be mad because you kind of like you chose to do that.
Yeah. So this is how I think people are going to build tomorrow. I think it's going to be Bo Nix with Troy Franklin, probably. I do think that there's going to be plenty of people who go Cortland Sutton, but I just for the purpose of building this out, I think it's probably going to be Darnell Mooney and Troy Franklin together. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson together, Devontae Smith, one of those cheap tight ends that we talked about. It could be Schultz, it could be Cade Otton, it could be Colton Loveston, whatever. And then Bo Nix, right? So I think that this is kind of the very basic form. Expensive running backs, mid-range cheap QB, 2 punt wide receivers, and then a punt tight end. And then whoever people want to play at utility, that's where it's going to be different. So the way that you kind of want to say for the way that you build, sticking on that concept, you can stay within this structure and do a couple little things different, but then you got to hope that the little things that you did different go to the fucking moon. Like, and that's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. But understand that if you stick in this structure and the way that you get different is by instead of going Darnell Mooney, you go with Rashid Shaheed, which is fine. Like, that's something that I've considered. Like, Shaheed is your single point of win equity. He has to absolutely nuke in order for you to actually end up winning. If he doesn't, you're going to bubble. So if you stick with this kind of structure, like you're more than likely going to bubble. the way that you do it in a way that gives you actual win equity is if you try to stick within this basic framework and say, instead of Bo Nix, go with like a Drake May. Instead of Bijan Robinson, go Christian McCaffrey. Instead of Devontae Smith, go Cortland Sutton. Like, you can still play a bunch of ownership and stay within this elite RB structure with this kind of running back or wide receiver structure and a mid-range quarterback, or pay down at quarterback. And then all of a sudden, now you have win equity in every spot. You have win equity in every position instead of just having those bubbles. So I think that tomorrow there are enough, and this is kind of a weird thing to say in NFL, there are enough high-owned players that you can swap them in and out within the same framework and still give yourself a lot of relative value. You just treat it like NBA. So I just wanted to show that using the hand builder so that people could get a really good concept of like, oh, now I kind of see exactly how the framework should be put together. Just slot guys in here and there, get your 3 or 4 pivots within the players that are in the player pool, and then you have enough relative value to actually pass.
Yep. So let's do 2 things before you go. I got to go in a minute. Number 1, let's pick our kind of whatever you want to call it, like the player that you are going to probably dying your sword on tomorrow. And then number 2, let's answer any final questions. My player is not going to be surprised. Everyone in the Discord, I mentioned him a few times. It's Spencer Rattler. I think that he's the only quarterback who I can pair his receivers on the slate with in a game environment that I like, where I'm not giving up a bunch of value. Like, you can play Rattler with Shaheed Olave, and you don't have to feel bad about it because those players project to be super great. Like, you should consider them anyway in a game environment. And people are like, Spencer Rattler, I don't want to play him. Like, he sucks or whatever, right? And on top of that, you have great bringbacks on the Tampa side. And because of Spencer Rattler, I think he's not going to be nearly as owned as he would be. And so that's my guy. I will probably either win or lose a lot of money because of him tomorrow. And I'm okay with that. I feel like I have very good justification behind it.
Yeah, my guy is, so I have 2. I have a micro and I have a macro. Okay, so my macro is Atlanta Stacks tomorrow. I think because of the fact that we have a direct pivot from Bijan to CMC, and we have Kirk Cousins, who's 4,400, and now we have no Drake London, so our wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 combo, less than 13K, that's just an incredible spot in GBPs. So very similar to your New Orleans reasoning. I just really like Atlanta Stacks with the added benefit of getting some direct leverage on Bijan. And then my micro is Rashid Shaheed. I just think that, like, at his price point, he's the same play as Darnell Mooney, and he's going to be 5% owned or something. In a really strong game environment, he had 10 targets last week. Like, he's just a really, really good play. I think he's probably a better play in a vacuum than Troy Franklin, especially considering ownership. Those are going to be the 3 guys that you're kind of swapping in and out are Mooney, Shaheed, and Troy Franklin. And I'm just happy to take the ownership discount on Shaheed and plug him into a super high owned lineup otherwise, and just hope that he is my win equity, like I mentioned.
Cool. Are there any final questions? I think we've got a good feel for the slate. I mean, I can't say I love it. I mean, I think I generally like slates where building isn't so easy. It feels kind of hard because of that. But you just, you have to play the cards you're dealt. And I do think at least on this slate, we have a few avenues to differentiate, which is nice. I mean, like, yes, the pricing sucks. Yes, there's going to be really good chalk. Yes, the scores are going to be astronomically high, and it's going to be annoying that you need such a great score to win. But, at least we do have a few spots that probably will give us some leverage through ownership.
Yeah.
And that's some solace.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Okay, so let's see. I don't think we have too many questions here. That's okay. National Tight End Day double up. Not doing that. I mean, I get it. Like, I know memes are fun, but like, I'm just probably not gonna. I just don't care. If you are gonna double tight end, the thing that you would end up doing actually is playing like two of the expensive ones, right? Like you'd probably end up doing like Tyler Warren plus, Goddard. Yeah, that's the way that you would probably end up doing it. There's so much fucking value on the slate outside of the tight end position. I just can't justify it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ingram and Mooney, Schultz, Offen. Yeah. I mean, or Schultz, Otten. I'm just not. They just don't have the ceiling, man. You could argue, sure, that the expensive ones have the ceiling, but like I'm not going to plug in Otten when I can just get up to Shaheed. I'm just not going to do that. Yeah. Let's see. Shaheed versus Downs, same price. I like Downs, but Indianapolis is just going to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor fucking 40 times.
Yeah.
They don't have to do anything else. They haven't had to do anything else for 3 fucking weeks, and they've faced way better opponents than Tennessee. I can't think of. God, I'm gonna get fucking crucified for this. I can't think of a bigger lock this year than Jonathan Taylor in this spot. I've been starkly against running back chalk so far this year in a lot of ways because it's just been like, we had this and we have this and we have this.
Yeah, he should just completely smash. It's really, and it's not too hard to get to him, especially given that we like the cheap quarterbacks.
And because of that, like I have to lean into Shaheed. I think that Downs is fine, and look, that offense is good enough that maybe Downs is able to get there as well. But I just like the game environment. I like the volume for Shaheed. Shaheed's volume is much better than Downs. I don't have to worry about Alvin Kamara getting 6 touchdowns in fucking 2023. So, I got to stick with the Shaheed side on that, unfortunately. No, I do like Downs. He's a good player. All right, that's going to do it for us. It's been a good show. I think this slate, it's just another fucking NBA slate, but you just have to play it the way that you play it. We got the midseason event. Pablo and I will be in it. I know Gordy will be in it. I'm sure that CKK will be in it. We'll have some good Paydirt representation in the midseason. I'm sure there's a couple other guys in the Discord that are going to be in it as well. If you're not over at Paydirt, you should be. Subscription options are here: $40 a month for full access, $35 a month for NFL, $225 through the end of the year. At the end of this month, this price is going to go down. So if you have been looking to get a yearly subscription, this is going to go down at the end of the month. And then we have weekly and daily options as well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in the Discord. You can join up here. It's free to join. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you so much for everything. And we are going to get out of here so we can go win this slate. Pablo, any closing notes here?
No. Built for ceiling.
Build for ceiling. All right.
You're not going to win without ceiling. Good luck, everyone.
Adios, folks.